Every celebrity cameo from Family Guy explained. Robert Downey Jr. Robert Downey Jr. played Patrick Pewterschmidt, Lois's serial killer brother. So when Peter breaks a picture frame hula hooping, Lois notices the folded part of the picture reveals a boy who looks scarily like her. Through some breaking and entering to get into her dad's office, Lois discovers that she has a brother called Patrick, played by Iron Man himself, Robert Downey Jr. She follows the paper trail leading to Patrick's address, only to find out that he's been placed in an insane asylum. As he explains, Carter puts him in the asylum after he walked in on his mom having an affair with Jackie Gleason. Since her parents had forgotten about his existence, Lois decides to take him home. Patrick thanks his sister for her hospitality, and that's where things start to take a turn.
Marion is my wife. She is sitting right next to me.
Oh, here we go.
Lois starts to question whether taking a mental asylum patient home was her greatest idea. Go figure. But she decides to give her brother a chance. Patrick continues to bond with the family, but he has a huge problem with Peter because to him,
fat people are immoral.
The next day, Lois sees a news report about the murder of an overweight man with the police sketch report looking just like her brother. When 3 more men are found dead, the murderer is given the Fat Guy Strangler moniker. Peter is quick to believe that it's him and chases Patrick out of the house, but Lois still isn't convinced. Brian shows her the room Patrick has been staying in, which doesn't just include photo evidence of all of his killings, but also a literal dead body. It's only at this point that Lois clocks that her brother is the Fat Guy Strangler and goes to find Peter. Lois finds Patrick in the woods ready to kill Peter, but threatens him by holding Marion at knife point. You can't see her here because, well, you aren't crazy, but Patrick is, so he lets Peter go to save his wife. He breaks down and apologizes to Lois, who recommends he return to the asylum with the promise of visiting him once a month. I'm 99% sure that didn't happen. Anna Kendrick. Anna Kendrick played Nora, a new police officer caught in the middle of Joe and Bonnie's marriage. So Joe's friends congratulate him at the bar after a major drug bust, but he doesn't get the same reception from Bonnie when he gets home. He invites her to the party his chief is throwing in his honor, but she declines, not wanting to get sympathetic looks from the other cops. So Joe gets to the party, joined by his friends, and meets the latest transfer to his station, Nora. She congratulates him on his work. More specifically, she fangirls over him hard.
You know how they say never meet your heroes? Well, they don't say anything about kissing them.
Things go from 0 to 100 when Nora takes advantage of Joe's vulnerable moment when he explains that his wife didn't join him. The next day, Joe confides in his friends about Nora kissing him against his will. Peter and Quagmire, in all their infinite wisdom, encourage Joe to sleep with her since Bonnie had an affair of her own. So to them, this would make him even. The next day, Nora approaches Joe at the station to apologize for her actions, but Joe takes his friend's advice to heart and invites her into the handicapped bathroom. Joe goes ahead with the affair even though he can't properly consummate the relationship. Joe tells the guys what he's done, but since he's just as smart as they are, he does it right in front of the baby monitor. Bonnie overhears and rips into Joe for his actions. When he tries to justify his affair by bringing up her own, Bonnie reveals that she never actually slept with someone else, just wanted to. After a huge argument, the pair threaten to divorce each other. Feeling bad for encouraging his friend into having an affair, Peter tries bringing the couple back together by inviting them to the place they met and playing their song, Africa. Peter's plan works and the couple reconciles. Anna Kendrick, long forgotten. Ryan Reynolds joined Family Guy to play a Hollywood star who moved into Quahog, Ryan Reynolds. After a doctor's appointment, Peter walks outside only to be greeted by the self-proclaimed star of The Proposal and The Change-Up, Ryan Reynolds, who's moving to Rhode Island to shoot a movie. When he sees that the star has moved into Cleveland's old house, Peter goes to greet his new neighbor who invites him to his housewarming party happening that night. It's Ryan Reynolds. Of course Peter says yes.
You made it! And you brought a friend. Great.
By this point, it starts to look like Reynolds may have a crush on Peter. The suspicions only grow as the Deadpool star has a tickle fight with Peter, goads him into complimenting his physique, and even asks him out for dinner. So, not a date. Peter hasn't picked up on the hints, so he says yes to Ryan's offer yet again. So the two share a feast of Moroccan food, but alarm bells ring for Peter when Reynolds literally forces his hand into the Griffin man's mouth to feed him some lamb tagine.
That was intense.
Finally picking up on these strong hints, Peter goes around Ryan's house to confront him about the actor's possible crush on him. He gives him the classic "it's not you, it's me" speech, telling Ryan that he's not interested in men. But plot twist, neither is Reynolds. Reynolds is beyond confused when Peter suggests that he's gay, stating that he's attracted to Peter in the way that a man is attracted to a woman. But he's definitely not gay. Realizing that he's stuck his foot in it, Peter tries to backtrack and salvage as much of his friendship with Ryan as he can, but the actor isn't interested.
I could never really be attracted to somebody who uses labels like gay straight.
Peter is left crying over the loss of his new best friend, but it's not the end of the world as Reynolds leaves him with the phone so they can always stay in contact. Two-time Oscar winner Cate Blanchett played Penelope, the love of Stewie's life. Stewie getting pushed over at the park turns out to be the best thing to happen to the baby that day as it leads to another girl coming over to check on him, Penelope. She doesn't just make sure he's okay, she also gives the boy who pushes him taffy with super glue. Watching her evil plan play out in front of him has Stewie crushing hard. The pair continue to hang out and bond over their weapons rooms and commit acts of war.
We blew up the Great Wall of China, bombed the Eiffel Tower, and
Stewie is certain that his female counterpart is his soulmate, but Brian sees that her influence on him isn't the best thing for the baby. When Stewie tells Penelope that Brian suggested they spend less time together, she responds with the worst suggestion of them all.
kill him. Kill Brian for me.
Stewie agrees at first, but after his failed attempt at killing his best friend, he realizes what he's doing is insane and tells Penelope as much. Having known all along that he couldn't do it, she instead vows to do the job herself. Brian doesn't find her a threat at first, but when she shoots the mailman and then him straight after, he calls in Stewie for reinforcements. The so-called soulmates get locked in an epic yet brutal battle, using all the gadgets they have at their disposal. Stewie does get the upper hand and goes to finish the job, but she asks him to let her deliver a final message.
But just one thing. What?
It was all the distraction she needed to make her epic getaway, leaving Stewie tied up and still madly in love. Brian thanks Stewie for saving his life, and the baby reassures him that their relationship has and always will come first. But with the getaway she made, is there a chance for Cate Blanchett's return in the future? Kristen Bell has a role as Brian's new coworker Martha, who becomes a victim of his sleazy ways. Before I start, the episode before this one told the story of Brian getting kicked out of the house after becoming public enemy #1 following an insensitive tweet. Fast forward to this episode, and Brian is struggling to pay the rent on his apartment. To make some cash, Brian gets a job working at the suicide hotline where he meets his new office buddy, Martha. He tries to make a move on her, of course he does, it's Brian, but she isn't interested.
Maybe we could Netflix and grill.
I think it's Netflix and chill.
After she walks away, Brian takes that as his sign to creep through her Facebook photos and spend some quality time with his hand. But he doesn't realize that while he's doing that, she's rethinking her decision to say no to him. She goes back into the office with the intention of saying yes, but she catches Brian in the act.
Gross! You scumbag!
The next day, Martha chooses to overlook his creepy actions and take them as a compliment instead. One way of looking at it, I guess. Her response wasn't just unexpected to fans, but also Brian. She didn't, but it was already too late. Brian had called the cops. As soon as the cops arrest her for drug possession, it clicks for Martha, and she realizes who is behind framing her. Brian tries to apologize, but doesn't tell the cops that any mistake was made, so she lashes out and gives Brian the least he deserves. A rough shove out of the door and down a flight of stairs. The only thing is, it didn't help that she did this right in front of the cops. Liam Neeson is another actor who cameoed on Family Guy playing himself and one of Peter's biggest enemies. Tom Tucker delivers the super important news report that Liam Neeson is shooting a movie 3 hours away from Quahog, and Peter's got some thoughts about it.
What? He's a fake tough guy. I could totally kick his ass.
The disgruntled groans from his friends indicate that this isn't the first time Peter has claimed that he could take action star Liam Neeson in a fight. In fact, it's something he apparently does every time he gets a few beers in him, even bringing it up when he's at the opera. But they move on from the comment and go to attend Quagfest, Quagmire's festival to celebrate landing his 1000th woman. Quagfest comes and goes, and the guys find themselves in the bar again, where we get a case of deja vu. Peter, several beers deep, claims that he could take Liam Neeson in a fight. So the guys call his bluff and drive Peter to the movie set that Neeson is working on. He fails to get on the set, so instead he sets up a confession booth. An Irish person's weakness, apparently.
I killed 200 wolves. After the movie, I got the taste for it.
Hearing the concerning confession doesn't deter Peter, who still lets the police know that he plans to hurt the actor. Obviously, he gets arrested for his honesty, but his bail gets posted not by his friends, but by Liam Neeson. Standing face to face with Neeson, Peter tries to make good on his word, but his attempt is pathetic. Realizing he's out of his element, Peter begs Neeson for forgiveness, but the Irish actor isn't accepting it. He wants Peter as his slave. He's stuck shining shoes and doing menial chores for the actor, as well as getting humiliated by him in front of his friends.
That's why he's my big fat houseboy now.
It's one insult too much for Peter, who decides to finally live up to the claim he's been making all along. Neeson leaves him bloodied and beaten, but Peter at least puts up one hell of a fight, impressing his friends for his efforts. Allison Janney played the mom of one of the show's biggest offenders in an episode titled Quagmire's Mom. Every problem in this episode can be pinpointed to have started in one place: a house party that Peter threw against Lois's wishes. Quagmire meets Kira, a woman that he spends the night with, before finding out the next morning that she's a high school student. An anonymous tip to the cops, plus the photos he showed to impress Joe, leads to Quagmire's arrest for sleeping with an underage girl. As he stands on trial, he talks about what made him the way he is. He blames his absent dad as well as his mom, who sounds just as sexually active as him. His pleas don't work as he's sentenced to 20 years in prison, which is when Allison Janney's character walks in.
Oh, no, you don't!
Crystal tries to convince the judge that she has found God and that the best thing for Quagmire is to be released into her care to rehabilitate him. He doesn't give in, but he allows Quagmire 24 hours to get his affairs in order and say goodbye. Crystal tries to get Quagmire to seek forgiveness from the Lord, something her son finds highly hypocritical given her checkered past. Quagmire calls her out for being a terrible parent and only seeking God to use him as an excuse for her past indiscretions. It's not exactly a happy family goodbye, to say the least, as Quagmire decides he'd rather rot in jail than share a religious relationship with her. And so his time for prison comes, but right as he's about to step in to serve time, the judge shows up to tell him that his case is getting thrown out thanks to some new DNA evidence being produced.
And an impressive amount, I'd say.
Gross. Quagmire walks away having faced no consequences for his actions as a result of his mom's talents, and the two agree to attempt to work on their relationship going forward. Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase teamed up once again to play themselves as a pair of undercover spies. Peter invites Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase around for dinner since they've moved into Cleveland's old home for a movie they're shooting. Brian and Stewie are suspicious about the pair's intentions for moving into Quahog and decide to go investigate the situation. They find a trap elevator that leads them to a secret underground bunker.
We're actually working for the federal government, and we need your help.
The pair reveal that they are honorary spies commissioned by Ronald Reagan since Spies Like Us was his favorite movie. Their current mission is to find a Russian sleeper agent living in Quahog, and since Brian and Stewie have more knowledge of the area, they are recruited for the task. They go to inform Adam West of their task, but in doing so, they use the trigger phrase that reveals the mayor to be a sleeper agent. West easily overpowers them and flees to Russia. They chase him down and enlist the help of Vladimir Putin, who wants to avoid international conflict. Ironic. They finally find West, but not before he manages to launch off a nuke. Thankfully, Dan has a plan.
We can reprogram and disarm the missile from here.
From here? Well, our arms would have to be 40 feet long, Dan.
They successfully reroute the missile and save the lives of millions. When Brian and Stewie return home, they reflect on the mission and utter the same trigger phrase. At that point, we find out that Adam West wasn't the only Russian sleeper agent in Quahog.
Shut up, 2476.
Elizabeth Gillies plays Alana, the Griffin's new housekeeper with a dark motive. Alana is one of Lois's piano students. Wait, Lois teaches piano? Anyways, she starts as Lois's student and talks about her financial troubles, which prompts Lois to offer the young woman a job as their housekeeper. Alana gratefully accepts and moves into their home, quickly becoming a welcome addition to the family. From spending time with Meg to impressive home-cooked meals, Alana does her job impressively, but she starts doing jobs that aren't hers to fill.
You see anything else you like?
Alana very clearly wants Peter, though her reasons aren't as clear. When Lois starts to feel like she's being replaced, she offers to pay for Alana's college fees to get her out of the house. Instead of using the money for college, Alana uses it to order hitmen to take out Lois. It's the ultimate shock to Lois when she wakes the next morning to find Alana dressed in her signature green shirt and a bright orange wig. Alarm bells are ringing at this point. Lois leaves to go to the store, telling Alana it's best if she's not there when she returns.
After today, I promise you will never see me again.
And here's where the hitmen come into play. They kidnap Lois using a trap and leave a fake note on her behalf stating that she's leaving the family and becoming a lesbian. Peter cries over the loss, knowing that no woman could ever compare to his soulmate, that is until Meg brings up the issue of who will cook dinner for them, which fast tracks us to a wedding between Peter and Alana. After reciting their vows, the priest gives everyone one last chance to give their objections. Cue Lois. She breaks through the window and explains everything that Alana did, which prompts Joe to arrest her. After some time passes, Alana asks Lois to visit her in prison, which she does. She apologizes to Lois and tells her about prison life, not having to cook or clean anything.
I want to switch! I want to switch!
Ricky Gervais played an unwanted guest in the Griffin home, Billy Finn the Dolphin. When a cargo ship carrying a load of Mercedes-Benz cars sinks, Peter and the guys try to recover a free car for themselves. They don't find a car, but they do meet Billy Finn, a British dolphin who helps them get a hood ornament. As a thanks for his help, Peter asks if there's anything he can do for the dolphin in return.
You could eat only dolphin-safe tuna.
Since it costs more, Peter can't say yes to his request, which leads to nothing but regret when the dolphin shows up at his door late at night asking for another favor. Billy wants to try living on land and asks to live with the Griffins, a squid pro quo exchange as he calls it. So Billy moves in with the family and things get off to a pretty good start with the family enjoying his constant comedic input, but Peter starts to grow tired of no longer being the funniest family member as well as getting his manhood insulted by a damn dolphin.
Have you actually got a penis?
Yes.
Where is it? Where is it?
Peter gently tries to get Billy to leave, but the dolphin teases him about another hood ornament that he may or may not have in his possession. It's enough to tempt Peter into letting Billy stay. A few more annoying jokes later and everyone has truly reached a breaking point with the dolphin, which is how they find a way to get rid of him. Billy reveals that he would love to go back to the ocean, but his wife won't let him. Even dolphins go through divorces apparently. So Peter takes Billy back to the ocean to try and reunite the couple, but Joanne isn't interested in getting back together, even when Aquaman tells her to. He makes one last-ditch attempt to get her to reconsider her decision by telling her it's what Fish Jesus would want. And wouldn't you know it, it works. The dolphin couple make up and Peter no longer has to live with Ricky Gervais insulting his size, or lack thereof. Comedy legend Betty White played herself as an erotic novel narrator. Peter buys an erotic book, Much Ado About Humping, but is disappointed in what he reads. It's so bad that he writes to the publisher to complain as well as submit what he would have written instead. He reads out his suggestions to his friends who are impressed enough that they suggest he write an erotic novel of his own. He takes their advice and writes a book, taking it to Carter to ask for a $7 billion investment so he can publish it. The crazy asking amount is met exactly how you'd imagine, in rejection. Instead, Carter gives him $5 for Xeroxes and Peter goes to sell the book off his own back. One of his novels, Peterotica, becomes such a hit that he even manages to get the late great Betty White to read it out for the audiobook.
Oh God, you should have seen this one hot chick. She was totally Italian.
Whether it's the novel itself or Betty White's voice, it's enough to get the driver hot enough that he takes off his top, causing him to crash his car. Since Peter listed him as a publisher to thank him for the $5, Carter is sued for everything he has by the man in the car crash. With the intention of killing Peter for costing him everything and his wife, Carter goes around to the Griffin's home. But after Lois is convincing, Carter instead moves in with them. Peter tries to teach Carter how to be a normal guy without money, but realizes that being normal is boring. The two formulate a plan on how to get rich again, but they get interrupted by the one and only Betty White, who's angrier than Carter ever was.
I just got a subpoena regarding an erotic novel, and I'm looking for the son of a bitch responsible.
You get him, Betty. All their attempts to get rich are in vain as Babs returns to Carter saying she made a mistake. Carter spends all of 2 seconds before deciding he's going back to hating Peter and leaves him no richer than before. Ed O'Neill played another parent on Family Guy in the form of Joe's ablest dad. With Father's Day right around the corner, the guys bring up the fact that they've never met Joe's dad. Joe admits that they're estranged, which prompts his friends to call his dad and invite him into town for the holiday. It's a nice gesture, but a huge mistake. Joe tells them that the reason he's not spoken to his dad in years is that the man always made fun of disabled people, and since becoming handicapped, he hasn't wanted to call his dad out of fear. He tries to call off the visit, but it's already too late, so they try to come up with a plan of hiding his paralysis. A few stupid plans later, they decide that the best thing to do is to have Peter and Joe trade places for the weekend.
I barely recognize you. Put on a little weight, haven't you?
Peter and Bud get on like a house on fire, spending time bonding together on patrol. When they get back home and they see Joe posing as Peter, Bud launches into a string of insults about the man in the wheelchair, not realizing it's his own son. Even worse, Peter joins in. Suffering from his own daddy issues, Peter tells Bud that he can move in with him and Bonnie. It's a crazy idea, but Peter isn't seeing reason. He continues to become more like Bud, insulting Joe out in the open.
A guy like that should just stay inside so we don't have to look at him.
It's one insult too many for Joe, who finally snaps and beats Peter up. By this point, the ruse is up. Bud finds out that his son is the one in the wheelchair and admits he has only ever made the rude comments out of fear that the same could happen to him. The two have a heart-to-heart and vow to work on their relationship again.
I love you, son.
Elizabeth Banks plays Pam Fishman, the wife of Lois Griffin's ex-boyfriend. Lois returns from grocery shopping with the news that she's run into her ex-boyfriend and has agreed to take the family around for dinner at his house. The Fishmans brag about their jobs, family vacations, and everything that makes them the better family.
I just got home from work, put down the lawyer's briefcase, and put on the chef's hat.
The whole dinner leaves the Griffins feeling like the inferior family, and in retaliation, Lois forces the family to prove that they're better than the Fishmans by matching their challenge of climbing Mount Everest. They meet the Fishmans at base camp and vow to beat them to the top. Surprisingly, they do actually make it to the peak of Mount Everest, but unsurprisingly, they weren't the first family there.
Don't feel too bad, gang. We only beat you by 1 hour, 12 minutes, and 43 seconds.
Once again, bested by the Fishmans, the family starts their descent down the mountain but gets caught in the middle of a heavy storm. The lethal journey only goes from bad to worse as they find the youngest Fishman frozen dead. It's a case of life or death for the Griffins at this point. With no food left and an entire mountain to climb down, they make the difficult choice to eat the kid. It's enough to fuel them back to base camp, but when they realize the Fishman parents aren't there, they go on a rescue mission. They find them passed out in a crevice and heroically come to their aid, hoisting them up and carrying them all the way back to safety at the base of the mountain. The Fishmans come back to consciousness, grateful for the Griffins in a touching moment before Peter ruins it with his parting words.
All right, you rest up, get better, we ate your son.
Tom Brady joined the show for an episode to play the 7-time Super Bowl winner, Tom Brady. Peter attends his high school's 25th reunion under the pretense of having made it big in life as a secret agent astronaut millionaire. It just so happens that one of his classmates brought along Tom Brady, and after a few too many beers, Peter runs past him to the bathroom, showing off his athletic prowess as he goes. You heard me right, prowess. Tom is impressed by what he sees and makes an incredible offer to Peter.
How would you like to play for the New England Patriots?
He's usually an idiot, but this time Peter makes the smart decision and says yes to Tom's proposal. His football career couldn't get off to a better start as he scores a touchdown in his first NFL game, and invites Brady to join them for a celebratory dinner. Some family members, more than others, fangirl hard over having the NFL star in their home. As the games go on, Peter's showboating becomes an issue. Rather than just celebrate like any other player, Peter puts on an entire performance of Shapoopy from The Music Man. This is the tipping point for Brady, who gets him kicked off the team and traded to an English team.
I talked to the coach, and he's selling your contract to another team.
The London Silly Nannies aren't the most impressive team, but Peter vows to make them better in time for a grudge match against the Patriots. As hard as he tries, all the training in the world couldn't have prepared them for the matchup. Peter stands his ground against the NFL team while the rest of his teammates run off in fear. So, not the biggest surprise in the world that Peter couldn't win a game of football on his own, but what he did win was the respect back of Tom Brady.
Actually, Peter, you're not a loser at all. What you did just now was pretty ballsy.
Still not ballsy enough to earn him back his spot on the Patriots. In a Thanksgiving episode, Kate McKinnon played Karen Griffin, Peter's sister and bully. The trauma journey for Peter starts when he gets a letter from his sister and aunts that the kids didn't even know they had. Everyone but Peter is excited to read the letter that explains she'll be joining them this year for Thanksgiving. So the big day arrives and everyone gets to meet Peter's doppelganger for the first time.
The one that got away. I'm just Josh's kid. Auntie's not a biscuit bumper.
The siblings share looks and fart jokes, but no love. It's not just his family that lives for Karen, but also his friends who recognize her as the wrestler Heavy Flo. His friends gush over her strength and humor, and it becomes increasingly clear why Peter hasn't wanted to introduce his sister to anyone. Jealousy. Lois pleads with Peter to attempt to pretend to have a good holiday with his sister there, so he reluctantly sits down at the table where he joins her mid-embarrassing childhood story. Every story she tells is at his expense, and he goes from being the source of the jokes to the butt of the joke. So dinner is a failure, but he attempts to play Happy Family once again for a touch football game in the backyard. Karen very quickly takes the game from a touch football to a pay-per-view WWE match. This is where her true intentions become clear.
That's his stutter. And whenever he stutters, he usually pees his pants.
Given that she's the most bullied character on the show, Meg realizes that her aunt is a huge bully to Peter and not in the usual sibling way. She goes to comfort her dad and tries to get him to confront his sister, but Peter misunderstands her advice and decides to challenge Karen to a lady wrestling match. He dons the name Maxie Patty and puts himself in the ring with his sister. Even when Karen discovers that it's Peter under the disguise, she still gives him her full force in the fight. The fight looks all but won until Meg joins the match and saves her dad. They take out Karen as a team and do enough damage that she's left in a coma and in need of an organ transplant.
No, I think I'm a different blood type.
Brutal way to get revenge, Peter.